Therapists of Reddit, what was your "you must be kidding me" moment? Apathy One These says, intake clinician here. What brings you in today? I'm here for porn addiction. At this point, not the weirdest thing I've heard, let's go with that. Okay, tell me about it. I watch it 3 times a week, for 15 minutes or so at a time. My girlfriend said I'm an addict and forced me to come in. I see lots of very extreme cases, but this was so minor that it made me stop for a moment. I sent them to couples counseling. Gumbercules says, obligatory, not a therapist, but my hyperconservative parents sent me to an addiction therapist because they found out I smoked pot occasionally in high school. The therapist they chose was a former White House drug czar, a renowned authority on cocaine addiction and hard drug abuse, and an expert on rehabilitating extreme problem cases. My parents must have spent a fortune and pulled strings to get me an appointment. The first session he asks me what drugs I use. I told him I smoke pot like once a week and that was it. After a few rounds of "come on, you can trust me," and "we can't begin treatment until you admit your problem," he realizes that I really do only smoke pot once in a while and literally says, "You have got to be kidding me. Tell your parents you are a normal teenager and you don't need to come back." OMG Unicorn says, one client of mine bites and eats his fingernails. Gross, but not unheard of. Then I learn he stores his fingernails in a box in his room to save them for a snack later. A little grosser, but he's about 9, so I'm hoping he will grow out of it. What finally made me want to vomit was learning that when anyone in his family clips their nails, fingers or toes, they give him the clippings to add to his box. So when he's eating nails from the box, they could belong to his mother, father, or siblings. Yes, I've addressed the parents about enabling this behavior, but it is still happening. Suicidal _8,273,255 says, had a client who we found out was storing his own shit under his bed. He would then eat his shit for a snack. Rarbird says, one that sticks out in my mind was a mother that brought in her 5-year-old for therapy because she was into Disney princesses, which are clearly sexual, and since a 5-year-old is non-sexual, this must clearly mean she's being sexually abused by a close family member. I've also worked with countless couples who have come to counseling for adultery wherein adultery equals porn. One client even became suicidal because she caught her husband jerking off after not having sex with him for months. I know everyone has different values, but come on, y'all. Eggywegs says, a client was going to probate court and thought he'd dress up by putting a non-slip sock on his collar as a tie. Trying to be supportive, I told him, nice tie. To which he replied, it's not a tie, it's a sock, stupid. Flipopopotamus says, I used to work with children that have autism and Down syndrome, which means a lot of play therapy. I had my moment when one of my clients wanted to sit on my lap while we practiced reciting animal cards followed with their corresponding noise. Forgot what animal noise I made that made him laugh so much that he ended up peeing on me from the laughter. That night was also date night. Pine Squared says, just today I conducted a threat assessment on a first grader who told his teacher he wanted to stab himself with a knife and die. Upon further questioning, he revealed that he and Dad watched The Walking Dead together, and last time on the show he saw 2 people stab themselves to death because they didn't want to get eaten by the zombies. Why are you even watching that show with a 6-year-old? Sigan says, I was working surveillance one night at a psych ward, keeping a close watch on a mentally ill patient. Right before my shift started, I was briefed that the patient had started eating one of the light bulbs and attacked a nurse. At around 5 a.m. he woke up and saw me hiding there at the end of his bed. I said good morning and he didn't reply. About 15 minutes of silence went by before he stood up and stared out the window and said, a person is most vulnerable while taking a shit. I didn't sit back down for the rest of my shift. Leahan 15 says, social work, not therapy but close enough. Me, we need to think of some new ways for you to discipline your daughters other than spanking. Client, but my parents did it to me and I turned out okay. Me, stares at this high school dropout drug addict who has spent his entire adult life in and out of jail, halfway houses, can't get a job and had his 3 kids removed for abuse and neglect. Okay. I actually did successfully turn this around in a gentle way and make him realize he hadn't actually turned out okay. Lil Knight says, not a therapist yet, but I'm currently taking a counseling and therapies university course, and we occasionally hear some stories from our professors in lectures or tutorials. One sticks out in my mind because I'd never seen an entire class shocked into silent horror before. A guest lecturer told us about a client he had who used a craft knife to cut open his own scrotum and took out what was inside because he wanted to look at it and play with it. Sitor says, I had a group of 5 insane people come in to discuss who should clean the dishes. Peruvian Vipertooth says, I work in a community residence for adults with mental illness. Most of them are very capable and independent. One girl, 27 years old, constantly acts really dumb for sympathy and will do dumb things because she can, I guess. First week she was admitted she tripped on something getting out of bed. She's 5'1" and like 200 pounds, and she fell on her foot and broke some of the small bones in the foot. I take her to get her cast and she gets the usual don't get the cast wet, use your crutches, elevate, blah blah. Since her bedroom was on the 2nd floor, we had to send her back to her mother's house for a few weeks since she would not be able to exit the building in time in case of emergency. Well, 5 days later, the shoe boot thingy to put over your cast comes in and we call her up saying we'll bring it over. Her response, well, I don't think it'll fit. Why not, we ask. Because I cut my cast off, I got it wet and it was too tight. They didn't give her a second cast and she never used her crutches, claiming they were unstable and she would fall and get hurt if she used them. Her foot never healed properly and 2 months later she fell and broke it again. Name deleted says, my client told me his family didn't appreciate his interest in guns, to which he proceeded to tell me he is always carrying. He then places his gun on the table in front of me and asked if it made me nervous. It did, but we focused more about why he wanted to know if I was nervous and it brought it back around to his family. From then on, I made sure to always have access to a door and never put the client between the door and myself again just to be safe. Get Off My Couch says, this recently happened to me. I have a client who is a daily methadone doser. During our last session he complained of sleep issues. Delving into this new issue, he described his solution to me. He saves his spit in a jar to drink at night when he is unable to sleep. Saves his spit in a jar to drink later.